G'day, g'day, g'day. Don't skip. Let me interrupt the podcast that you're currently listening to with some blatant self-promotion. What do you get when you mix two Aussie mates, a splash of booze, well, more than a splash, and some microphones? You get Cheers Big Ears, hosted by myself, the Chad, and my mate, Matt, and sometimes, but more often than not now, my missus, Bobby. It's a podcast of adult beverages and not-so-adult conversation. It's not serious, far from it. Well, except for that one episode, but that was just that one. We're available wherever you get your podcast fix. Cheers, Big Ears.
Welcome to another episode. Mikey on mute, your mind's implode. He's coming off mute for you. Feel the vibe, it's something new.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mikey on Mute. As always, I'm your host, Mikey, coming off mute to tell you about my mental health journey, talk to others about their life stories, and so much more. Today, I'm very, very excited to have one of my biggest supporters on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an author, narrator, and founder of the Tales From Deranged Minds series. Let's welcome into the podcast, Ray Bush. Ray, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said, you've been a big supporter on Instagram. I appreciate we had something set up and had to rearrange the time, so I'm very appreciative of that. I'm glad that we're able to finally sit down and talk face to face. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, and so I really want to, look into you as the author and narrator here, and we want to touch on a lot of your books. So I guess, do you want to give us a little bit of a backstory on how you got into writing, or what your story is from there? If you just want to give us a brief little intro into who Ray is.
Well, like most authors, I've been writing for as long as I can remember. Just the last probably 2.5 years, I've really started focusing on getting my work out there. It started off on YouTube. I wrote the stories, and then my daughter was narrating them. And then she had life happen, got busy. So then I started narrating them. That was never the plan. At first it was very rough. They weren't very good recordings. She was a natural at it. I wasn't. It took me some time to get the hang of it. Yeah, we're on Rumble now and Patreon. I'm just getting ready within the next couple of weeks to go back on YouTube. So that'll be fun.
And I know, was it just recently you had a new book come out?
I have a solo one that's called A Book of Lost Souls. That came out roughly a year-ish ago. But then the Tales From Deranged Minds, that started on October of 2023. But we released our first one on Halloween. And then just at the end of February, was the 6th book in the series.
Awesome. And what are some of the, I guess, what's the little bit of the storyline here with Tales of Deranged Minds? If you could just give our listeners a little bit of a overview, what is that story arc kind of looking like?
So the Tales From Deranged Minds is actually a collaboration with some other indie authors. I put that together. The first one, there was 4 of us, and then it's just grown from there. That one's called Genesis. And then we moved on to Dark Love, and there was 7 of us in that one. And then the next one, there was 10. Then I think we even got up to 13. And then, so yeah, it's been growing good. We have a lot. There's 23 different authors that are involved in this series so far. And there's some good stories in there for sure. So what we did is,
That's a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
we have a poet. His name's Neil Stevens. So he was supposed to, in the first Dark Love, he wanted to try to write a short story. And then it got closer and closer, and he decided that he's a poet and writing a short story wasn't for him. And so what we did is I have now he writes dark poetry, and so we have a story and then a poem and then a story poem just throughout the book. So it kind of breaks it up between each author's stories.
Who's there? 1 second.
Yeah, for a minute. You're still frozen on my
Gotta love
screen.
technology. Gotta love technology. So I think we're back now. All right. Hopefully, I'll be unfrozen here. I know you worked with a lot of authors on this Tales from Deranged Mind. I also understand that there is some story to the different covers for each of the Tales of Deranged Mind, and wanted to see if you wanted to elaborate a little bit on what the covers mean and so forth.
So the covers, they're a little unconventional. They're but they're meant to match the series. They're supposed to be from Deranged Minds as well as the stories, so they look a little different from most of the covers out there, but they're unique, and a lot of people like them. So, and I've actually had a couple independent artists work on those, so we're trying to keep everything fully independent with this series. I think I might have
I
lost you
think that's
again.
great. No, hopefully we're all good. I know the technology seems to be spotty here, so hopefully it's not too bad. Am I coming in on your side now? Okay.
Yep, yep, we're good.
Okay,
It
excellent.
comes in and out.
As far as for it comes and goes, gotta love technology, I tell you. We spoke a few times through chat and on everything on Instagram, and I was very interested in kind of your take on mental health in general and if it tied into anything with the stories. But you had sent me a message that said mental health is very important and needs to be talked about more freely. We can't expect people to ask for help if half the world looks down on them for being different. And I really, really liked what you said there about the world looking down on you for being different. And so I want to know from your point of view, what are some ways that the world could get better at talking more freely about this topic, such as mental health?
But for me, it's just you got to let people. Just because somebody has an issue, it doesn't make them a bad person. It's that simple. Everybody has something, maybe not something that's labeled as a mental issue, but we all have something that we have to deal with. And to think that it's hard for me when people think that they're better with their issues than somebody else just because somebody else is struggling with it more than they might. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
it,
get
so
that.
it makes it so people like they don't want to talk to anybody about it because then everybody's like, oh, you're talking to a counselor? Like, yeah, I am. It helps. Or if you're on medication, yes. If it makes people feel better, then if that's what makes them happy and makes them feel, because this is a tough world, anything to help people get through it.
May have lost you here again. Oh, there we go. We're back. It is a tough world for sure. And so it's for a very long time, I think it was looked down upon to, like you said, talk to a counselor, look at medication or anything like that. And so, yeah, we definitely have to be more open and understanding about that. And that it doesn't make us, different in a bad way. It's just, you put different things into working a story, like each story is different. And so I look at it like every person's different, and you have to, tweak here and there, new little edits, and maybe edits are the, going to see a counselor or tweak the medicine. So, like I said, I really appreciate seeing more people think that we need to talk more openly about it.
But yeah, nobody's gonna ask for help if everybody just thinks they're not a good person. It doesn't make sense to me. It seems like somebody asking for help that kind of makes them a good person because they want to get better. But some people just like to judge.
Unfortunately, that is true. Unfortunately. I had a question as far as with mental health. Do you see any aspects of that seep into or bleed into stories or character development? Where does that come in? I know it's Tales from Deranged Minds. So is there an aspect of different characters with mental health, or what does that look like on a story style?
I would say the one that dips into that mostly for me, from my stories, is called The Broken Man, and that's somebody stumbles across a live stream on the dark web with some stuff going on, nothing, some brutal stuff going on, and at first they're kind of, what am I doing watching this? And then it kind of transforms into them enjoying it, and that's kind of the one that probably gets into it the most for me. And then in the ending, I won't get into that too much, but the ending, it really lets the reader know how mentally ill that the person watching really was.
I have to check out The Broken Man because, like I said, that sounds right up my alley for something I'd want to read. So, for sure, that'll be on my list here. I do see a lot in the background. Stephen King, was Stephen a big influence on your writing, or like growing as far as like your love of reading? Where does Stephen King play into that?
He's kind of the one I kind of patterned my, like, kind of stole his style a little bit. Not really stole it, made it my own a little bit, but yeah, he is definitely the biggest influence on me as far as that goes. But it's not really his horror books mostly. It's the Dark Tower series that's the one that got me.
Interesting. What about the Dark Tower series like drew you into more? Because obviously I think King is known for a lot more of his scary or horror stuff, but like what about the Dark Tower series spoke to you in a way that kind of awakened this author inside of you?
Well, honestly, it started with the first line. The first line of that series is the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. And just, for me, that's a good start to a story. And then there's just lines like that. Like another line in there is, go go then, there are other worlds than these. And just to see him, he says it was supposed to be his Lord of the Rings. So to see him go away from there's still horror aspects in it, but it's more of a fantasy type tell. It's that one's really hard to explain. It's really hard to explain that series, but to see him not just do the straight horror, and to see how, like, he's really talented. Like, in any, no matter what he writes, the man can write for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the evolution of a writer in different ways, especially somebody that has such a niche, obviously being known for all the different horror movies that he spawned out from his books and everything. So it is really, really neat to see that evolution of an author going from, horror to fantasy. That's quite a genre jump. So that's really interesting to me. And if anyone could pull it off, it's definitely Stephen King. So that makes sense.
Yeah, he did that series is it's my favorite book series by far.
Were there, as far as like an evolution of writing, Tales of Deranged Minds and everything, did you have a different idea about genres you wanted to write, or was this kind of always the goal of this is the topic I want to write about?
I've always been mostly horror, but I do like to step into other genres. Like my very first book, I actually need to get with my publisher. It didn't turn out very well through the editing process. I got excited and messed it up when I was editing it, so it didn't turn out like I wanted. But that's actually a love story that it's loosely based on how I met my wife. So yeah, but mostly yeah, I like horror.
It's really cool that you can pull from that personal experience and, going from a love story based on your wife to writing horror, which probably you can still pull different aspects of real life and put it in there. Do you find that there are pieces of your life or your story that kind of help you get into a, like, hey, I'm going to write about, this character's going through this, maybe I'll base it off a life event that happened to me? Or is it more so you want to give the character kind of their own full story?
There's a little of both. There's a few. There's a few of my characters that definitely have some of my personality traits. I try not to give all of them to one, kind of spread them out a little bit because I don't want to just write a story about. But one of my favorite things that I've actually been doing is I use real people in my stories. So I've written a story about three of my coworkers, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law. I even wrote one about my wife that one got me in a little bit. But yeah, I've been I've been using real people. I used my niece also and her best friend. It's actually pretty fun using you play off their real fears, so it's pretty fun and it's fun to watch their reaction when they listen to it.
And that's great. I think we're not really living if we don't get our wives mad at us a little bit from time to time. So I can I can understand there. I did an episode early on about meeting my wife. I think there was a few conversations after that episode came out that she was like, maybe we should have ran through this first before we went this way, but it's okay. Things fall into place how they will. So that's really, really cool though that you get to get that real reaction from people and everything like that. And it's mostly a positive response from them as far as like when they hear it, do they enjoy how you've captured their personality?
For the most, like my oldest son, the one I wrote about him, it's called Alone, and it's just he wakes up and there's nobody outside, nobody in the house. He's just all by him, and then it's just a story about him kind of wandering around. When I after he listened to it, he said, "I was very surprised. That was almost exactly how I would feel in that situation." So yeah, that was pretty fun to do that one too. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, and that you were able to capture that and get that kind of response. That's really, really cool. As far as just, I guess, you as a person, I really like to kind of get an idea from my guests that come on this show because I don't bring on everyone that's just about mental health. I think it's important to mix up guests on who's here and everything like that. So, just aside from being an author, like in a real person, what has been one of the biggest struggles for you, I guess, when it comes to understanding mental health, whether it's your own or a family members? I guess, we come from different backgrounds and upbringings, and I just want to understand, like, where has mental health made its biggest impact for you over your lifespan here?
Hmm. I would say mostly, probably I got a little bit of a temper. I'm not violent, but I kind of get mad pretty easy sometimes. So that probably that's been my biggest struggle. And there's there like we all struggle with different things. I don't struggle with that all the time. Sometimes it's loneliness or whatever. But yeah, that's been my biggest crutch. So I think it spawns. I had three older brothers that used to like to rough me up a little bit. So Brothers are good.
Absolutely. And always interesting to me because it seems like throughout the years, at least how I was raised and everything, anger is almost an acceptable outburst for men to, get their emotions out. And it's really strange to me because I don't think most of us when we get angry, we're not giving out positive energy or making the situation better. But it's so like I guess, ingrained in us that it's okay to be angry. And I know I've had to take steps back and go, wow, I did not handle that situation okay. So I hear you on anger being a crutch. And it's, like I said, it was told to me that that's kind of acceptable. And so I'm trying to unlearn that through my life. That's one of my struggles each and every day.
Well, that's the hard thing too, because it is kind of acceptable, but from angry people, like it does, you don't feel good. Like after, before, during, or after, you feel like shit. So it really does need to be talked. I'm actually in counseling for it. I take medication for it, so it really does need to be talked about, and it's really not acceptable. Like it's everybody gets frustrated sometimes, but like to really have anger, that's not good for anybody. Anybody, the person you're angry at, yourself, everybody around, it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely just a negative vibe overall for everyone involved. And I've had to talk to my therapist a few times about I get very defensive easily. If I start hearing things that maybe my brain doesn't see or process the same, I get very defensive, and defensiveness for me leads to anger. And I wind up being clouded by that. It's like I have blinders on, and all I can see is defensiveness. And it's almost like I almost picture, the old cartoons or whatever where they turn red and steam starts coming out of their head. That's how it feels, and it's not a good situation. And so learning how to one recognize that you are in that moment, that can be hard enough because a lot of times these outbursts can just happen. And two, finding a way to step back and choose a different way to get those emotions across. It takes a lot of work, but I think it's really important. And I'm, like I said, I'm proud of you for being able to recognize it and put in some work. And it's not easy. So major props to you on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely not a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work, and like you said, it's hard to control because most of the time it's just sudden, like a volcano. Just all of a sudden, you're angry. So to try to step back from that after you're already in it, it's tough. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, it is just a reflex. We have learned at some point in our life, we've learned that getting angry was beneficial somewhere along the line. Maybe it helped us intimidate somebody that was kind of coming into our space, or maybe it helped us back away from taking accountability. At some point in our life, being angry was helpful, which sounds strange, but that's to me, that's what I've been told is that at some point these things were helpful to you, even though they are negative things and we're working on changing them. We do have to kind of give ourselves grace, like, hey, at some point being angry is helpful. Why was that helpful, and how do I make it change so it's not that instantaneous, like just comes up out of emotion? Because when we're dealing with 100% emotion and we're not thinking at all, nobody is in a good space to be having a conversation. That's for sure.
No, I've never once had a rational thought when I was
I
not.
I love breaking things down logically and how they work, and I can't do that when I'm in that emotional state because all I can think about is, like I said, I get very defensive, and suddenly my mind's just like, how dare anybody disagree with me or not see my point of view? It's very unhealthy, and so I I really I strive to find different ways to get through that, and so it's tough, but like I said, I think doing the work is the biggest thing, and to keep doing the work, understanding it's not gonna be some magic fix, just going to, a counselor or therapist once or something, or taking a pill. It's not gonna be some magic fix, it's gonna take some continued work, so appreciate another person and another man that sees that.
Yeah, and that's definitely two men like us need to be able to sit down and talk about it and not have either of us feel weird and like just be able to have an honest conversation. You tell me how you feel, I tell you how I feel, and we just no judgment. Just there needs to definitely be more of that for sure.
Yeah, the judgments out there, it's so strange. We grew up with this idea that if you shared emotions or feelings, you were weak, or maybe that you're seen more as, feminine or something like that if you shared emotions. A lot of these negative, toxic masculinity ideas. And I remember just like how many times in my life did I hold things in? I didn't talk about it. And it led to a lot of unhealthy behaviors. It was like my unhealthy behaviors were okay because I was a man, so I could be angry, I could drink, and no one batted an eye at these unhealthy ways of me coping. And I really want the world to be more accepting. Like, why was it more accepting for us to hide emotions and drink and all that stuff than to be able to talk about it? It blows my mind.
Yeah, that's very weird, and it's not help if you keep stuff bottled in, an anger issue. The more I'm not able to talk about it, the worse it gets. Like you can't just hold stuff. No matter what your issue is, depression, sadness, loneliness, you can't. We got to be able to talk about it. We got to be able to talk about everybody, not just like you said. It's more was. I'm almost 50 years old. Growing up, it was more feminine to have emotions, like you were saying. But then as I got, my dad was my hero. He was a fighter, big, strong, masculine. As I got older, I found out that he was also on medication and he also went to counseling. So, and I never, as a kid, I never knew that. And it's because he was a manly man, didn't want anybody looking down on him for it. But it actually made me feel better about what I was going through and being able to reach it to be able to get help.
It's a really cool story, and I love that he was able to recognize that he needed that help. Can only imagine, like we went through things, and it only had to be worse at his age growing up and everything. So major props to recognize it, even if he did have to hide it. I think nowadays it's not as bad to tell somebody you're going to a counselor or therapist. I think it's a little bit more accepted. It still kind of gets a side eye from some folks, but working myself on letting that just kind of roll off my back and all that, because I had the idea that you had to be a manly man in order to succeed. You didn't share your emotions. You worked on cars. You didn't talk about things that were musical or anything like that. You had to talk about very manly things, and it was so much work putting on this mask almost and just trying to fit in. So one of the biggest light bulb moments for me was when a therapist was just like, none of that matters. What if they think that about you? If they think negatively about you, life goes on, it doesn't stop. And it was it's really hard to understand that, like, what you're telling me, that people's view of me doesn't change the outcome of my life. And that was one of those moments that should have been so simple for me, but I lived so long trying to just impress everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad to see the world is changing. I'm glad to see that we are having more people have more conversations. That's one of my main goals with this podcast, is to make these conversations a normal part of every day, that it isn't something that we have to hide or be taboo about. So like I said, this is great to be able to sit down with you and just have an honest conversation, man to man. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, me too. And it's kind of funny though, like I said, I'm almost 50 and I have an easier time talking about this to I work with there's some young people that I work with and they seem to be more understanding than if I were to talk to somebody my own age. Also the strength thing, we think, oh, I got to be strong and not let anybody, but really I looked at with my dad, I looked at him as more strong when I found out he was actually taking the steps because I didn't have a bad childhood, but there was times I saw him angry and I'm sure he didn't like that, just like I don't. So to see that he actually, like you said, recognized that and tried to change it, tried to fix it, that actually showed me more strength than anything else that he really ever did.
That's what I try to teach to my sons and anyone else I'm talking to, that that real strength comes from recognizing that we're all human. We all need help. We're all kind of trying to figure out this journey together because none of us have it figured out. And if anyone tells you they have life figured out, they're a big liar, is what I'm going to say. But um, so it is so nice to recognize it as a strength and not a weakness. And I am seeing it more, like I said, when I went to partial hospitalization last year, I was with a lot of like young 20-year-olds. Again, I'm 35, so it's not like I was double their age, but pretty close, like getting close to that. And it was really, really neat to see, like, I'm so glad you guys are taking care of this stuff now. Like, because in my early 20s, there's no way I was talking about mental health. And so it was a big relief for me to see that people were taking it a little bit more seriously at a younger age, and hopefully we leave the world a better way than we came across it.
100%. I definitely think this younger generation at least has that part figured out a little better than.
I get that. I think we all have this moment of we're like, okay, yeah, maybe you guys figured out a cracked part of the code that I couldn't get to, and kudos to you on that. So excellent. Well, with kind of getting near the end here with some upcoming projects, I know we talked a little bit about Tales from Deranged Mind. I also wanted to touch on Dark Love Reborn and Ray Bush presents a book of holiday specials. So I guess if you want to give us kind of a rundown of what to expect for upcoming projects, I'd love to hear about it.
The next Tales from Deranged, we're going to release that on July 4th, and it's going to be amusement park themed. So that's one thing about them too, is like, so the first one wasn't themed. I kind of was just pretty surprised that people were actually willing to just send me their stuff. So we released the next one on Valentine's, and that's when we started theming them. So that one was Dark Love, and we had Campfire, Winter's Whispers, The Night Before Christmas, and then Dark Love Reborn. And the reason, just real quick, the reason I actually did Dark Love Reborn is one of the authors in the first one, his name's Jason. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Legois. It's Liegois. But he had some issues when he was in the first one, and he wasn't able to give me his complete. So I told him I would release another Dark Love one so he could put the second half of his story in there. So there's that one. Just in February. There's so many good authors. It's hard to explain just how many good authors there are in this. It's amazing. And then the book of holiday specials is just stories that I've put together. Like I wrote a story for Halloween and that I released on Rumble. New Year's, I wrote a Christmas one. And then the one, like for my kid, the ones I wrote for my kids and wife on their birthdays and stuff like that. Those will all be in that one.
It's really cool. I'm really excited. I see the previews pop up on Instagram, and every time it catches my attention. It's great visually. I don't know exactly who's create. Is it you that's creating the teaser visuals or somebody else? But I don't know. Either way, it really catches my attention.
That's me also.
Excellent. That, like I said, that's awesome.
I'm very, very independent. But like the only people that help me with my audio stuff is my wife does the pictures, and then I have sound effects and stuff in that. And my youngest son does the sound effects. Everything else, I write it, I narrate it, and then I edit the narration. Everything else I'm pretty independent with.
Well, it's awesome to see, and like I said, it comes off really, really creative, really entertaining, and I'm excited to get some more of your content into my eyes. I have been so busy with just life things, but I want to take a step back and absorb a little bit, and part of that is reading and listening and everything like that. So I'm excited to see what's all coming out. While we are wrapping up here, I want to get the listeners to follow you. So where can they find you? I know you're on Instagram and TikTok, Blue Sky, I think YouTube, Rumble, all the places. But if you want to go ahead and share a few of your socials, whatever, wherever they can find you, go right ahead.
As TikTok, Facebook is just Ray. Instagram is Ray_Bush101. Blue Sky is Lost Souls 801. LOSTSOUL. And then same on Rumble and Patreon. It's the Lost Souls with a Z. And then there's all Tales From Deranged Minds pages that I run. And those are mostly, those are to promote those authors. That's not just my page. That's for all of us.
Well, Ray, this has been awesome. I really appreciate that we are able to finally kind of take time to sit down here and talk. I guess before we finish up the episode, is there anything you want to ask me, whether it's a personal question or about the podcast, anything that's on your mind that you're feeling like asking?
Um, what's the best way you found to deal with it when you're when you're about to have an outburst, when you're about to just get pissed?
That is a great question. So when I can feel it building, I can feel that defensiveness coming out, that anger coming up. Something that I found the most effective, and it might not be the easiest to get, but like I have a bunch of ice packs in the house for many reasons. I have migraines and I have two boys, so I'm always in the need of an ice pack. But I had to take a step back, like go in a different room, grab an ice pack, and I just put it on my chest, and that kind of extreme temperature change just kind of helped ground me just enough that I could go, okay, is this how I want to handle it? It's almost like I just stamp myself out of this very emotional state because it's really easy to get lost in. So finding a way that you can ground yourself is my best advice. It may work for some to, do that ice pack or run your hands under some cold water in the sink if you don't have an ice pack, something to kind of jar the body and bring you back into it so you're not so stuck in the mind is kind of how I have most dealt with it. Again, I'm not perfect. I don't get to the ice pack every time. I still have my outbursts. And so after that, understanding that I have to give myself a little compassion, that I'm still human and not coming down on myself so hard. That's been a hard thing, but those are kind of my two ways to go about it.
Nice. That's good. That's a good way. I've never thought of, but like, yeah, the kind of a jolt to your system kind of. That's a good idea. I'm gonna have to give that a shot.
Yeah, it was brought up to me. I can't remember if it was in therapy or in a group setting or something like that, but just the idea, it was like extreme temperature change, whether that's an ice pack or kind of like a quick exercise. I know that's the last thing on our mind when we're feeling angry is like do some jumping jacks or something, but just something physical that can kind of get you out of your head. And for me, it's like I said, been an ice pack or running my hands under cold water in the sink. I think excusing myself to the bathroom has gotten me through a lot of different situations because it at least gives me, hey, it's going to take me at least a minute to go to the bathroom here. That gives me a minute to not be in the same room or in the same situation. And I think just excusing yourself for even a minute can be a big change. And maybe you'll still have a bit of an outburst, but maybe it won't be as bad, or maybe you'll be able to talk it out. And so, if anyone wants my advice, I don't know if they do, but that would be my advice to them.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there anything that works for you when you feel an outburst coming on, as far as what tricks have worked for you?
Mostly the that just that they say count to 10 when you're mad. I usually need to count for like 10.
One
But yeah,
thing,
just
yeah,
mostly just getting out of the situation.
yeah, I feel you on getting out of there. One of the therapists said at some point you might have to go, and they call it the 1 to 24 rule. So hey, we're not going to touch base on this for at least an hour, but we're going to come back to it in at least 24 hours. So saying like, hey, I need some time to just like backup, give me at least an hour, whether that's listening to music, going for a quick drive or a walk, whatever it is to kind of get yourself back into that grounding moment. So that's been helpful too. It's hard because when I'm in those situations, I want to resolve it. I want to make sure my point gets across. So it's been a big growing thing for me to have to be like, I think we need to take just this little bit of space. And so, yeah, I hear you. Taking a step back and leaving for just a little bit can be a huge difference.
But you make a good point too. That's hard sometimes because you want to. You just in that moment, you feel like they need to hear you right now. So to be able to take a step back, it's a challenge for sure.
It really is because that's all you want, like you said, to be heard. A lot of times I've expressed in different situations, whether, it's with my wife or with a friend, that all I want is for somebody to almost be on my side. And I'm not thinking logically. So, like, I want them to just be okay with whatever I'm angry about. And most of the time, that's not okay. And I don't want to hear that. So, it does take a lot. But I'm proud of the moments I'm able to kind of step back and understand, like, I'm not going to resolve this in a good way right now. We need to kind of just take a little bit of a break here.
Yeah, that for me, that works the best. But it's definitely a challenge. Dealing with anything mentally is nobody gave us a handbook for this. It's all hard.
Yeah, there's definitely no handbook. That would be helpful sometimes. There are a lot of times, like, if someone could tell me step by step exactly what to do, that would be great right now, but that usually doesn't happen. Most of the time, no one's going to grab your hand and walk you through. So, learning how to do it on your own, it's going to suck for a bit, but it's definitely worth it.
It's better in the long run for sure.
Absolutely, it does. Well, Ray, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to talk to me here. Everyone listening, please go check out Ray Bush, check out Tales from Deranged Minds, take in as much content as you can. And as he had said, understand that those times are going to happen, and we need to make sure these talks happen more often and they're not as taboo. And I can't thank Ray, like I said, enough for it. So from my heart to yours, thank you for being on the show tonight. I truly appreciate it.
Same to you. It means a lot to me.
I'm glad to have made a new
And
connection. Yeah, everyone
everybody
listen.
listen. Thank you too.
They are.
Anybody who listens to anything that I do, I really appreciate it.
I always say if there's one person listening, I appreciate that person, because otherwise it's just me talking to myself half the time. So um, before we go on another rant about how we can make the conversation go better, I think this is a good time to say until next time. This is Mikey going back on mute. Thanks everybody for listening. This episode of Mikey on Mute is brought to you by Little Jerk Society. Little Jerk Society is a clothing company fueled by the raw energy of creative rebellion, celebrating those who march to the beat of their own drum. They care deeply about mental health and believe in a world where everyone can thrive, regardless of their challenges. Use promo code Mikey on Mute to save 15% on your order at littlejerkclothing.com. Again, that's littlejerkclothing.com. And remember, use promo code Mikey on Mute, all one word, to save yourself 15%. Go off and make a change.